And more. Oh, fuck. Game crash right away. Bruh. Happy spooky month indeed. Let me boot the game back up. So, I was already planning to stream today. I was gonna play more Black Myth Wukong, but I saw that we got an email this morning from 2.5 Studios, which is the same studio that made A Date with Death. And they sent a code for the demo for this game. The demo fully releases on the 7th, so you got early access. Man. Should be about there. I think it should be okay. Hopefully audio is good. I originally wasn't gonna stream until after I moved, but I was just like, I feel like streaming today. I dug out all the stuff that I needed. But anyway. Yes, always being vampires. I'm excited. I've been seeing stuff for this for a while now, and so having the demo early, I'm so happy. I'm excited. Anyway, let's do the do. Faster, Meike, faster. You have to keep moving or else. Oh god, they're gaining on us. Meike ran through the forest quickly as her legs would carry her, which, given the exhaustion she felt, was not very. She tried to obey Henny's orders, fearful of letting her friend down and of the shadowy figure that pursued them, but her body refused to listen. Her legs felt numb, insensible, as unfeeling as marble, but far weaker. It was through sheer force of will that she was able to keep going, and that alone, for all her strength, had already left her. Even as Meike ran, staggering blindly through the fog, she feared it was all lost. It was all lost cause. She was but a young woman, slender, and while not very short, quite unaccustomed to exerting herself. She was not like Henny, who spent her days on her hands and knees, polishing floors and blacking the fireplace. Meike's fingers were white as ivory, while Henny's were red, raw through demanding, and often physical labor. Meike's lungs, meanwhile, straining against the effort of running. Never before had she known the act of merely existing could be so exhausting. Mood. Meike, please, you need to hurry. Quickly, Meike. Henny reached back to take hold of Meike's hand, her coarse, short fingernails digging into Meike's palm. Henny was gripping so tightly it hurt, but Meike knew should she continue to tarry, she would be in for hurt far, far greater than this. Meike recalled how her father had looked back in their carriage, eyes wide, his face unusually pale. Meike had never seen her father look so scared before. He was a tall, imposing figure of a man, dashing even in his early 50s. He was accustomed to issuing orders, not receiving them. Hi, Sid. You ready for lesbian vampire romance? Meike thought her father immovable, much like the oak tree which shielded her family's mausoleum, which had stood there longer than the crypt itself, its trunk wide, its boughs weathered. But Meike had learned that even her father had a weakness. Yay! Getting off early is always good. She had once thought her father a force of nature, quite impossible to argue with or to get the better of, but this supposition had been turned on its head in a mere handful of minutes. For all of his bluster, Meike's father was only human. He was made of flesh and blood, like Meike, and when cut, he would bleed. He had bled a lot, in fact, all over the plush upholster seats of their carriage and onto the floor. His fine clothes had been stained black with the stuff, and the air had stunk of it, sharp and tinny. Meike could smell her father's blood even now, as she and Henny raced through the forest. She couldn't forget, however much she wished. Oh, if only the events of that night had been nothing more than a bad dream. Meike wished that the fog would clear and she would awake, her eyelids fluttering to discover herself sitting once more in her bed, in her home, the room flooded with pale sunlight. Meike! But Meike's surroundings did not shift. The trees continued to press in around her as though they meant to eat her alive. The shadowy pursuers were beginning to close in on them. Meike couldn't outrun them, no matter how she tried. She was flagging, her heart hammering in her throat. What would happen when Meike was not optimistic for hope, and for an if they caught her? What would they do to Henny? The thought was almost more than Meike could bear. It had been enough to lose her parents, but to lose Henny too. She hadn't done nothing wrong. Henny was no lady, she was just a maid. She was only being targeted because of her relationship to Meike and her family. Had Henny been traveling alone, she would have passed through the forest quite unscathed. It wasn't as though Henny had any valuables upon her person that was worth the effort of pilfering. Henny, Meike appealed to her mage between the sharp gasps of air which pierced her lungs as knitting needles might. Please let go. Leave me be. I'm just slowing you down. No, Meike, I can't do that. But there aren't any buts. I won't leave you behind if that's not what friends do. But Henny, I said there aren't any buts. Now let's keep running. Meike wanted to run. She really did, but her body had already begun to give in. Her heart might have been pumping fit to burst at the base of her throat, but her legs were weak despite the excess blood which filled her, and her hand in Henny's felt cold and clammy. she couldn't keep going. It wasn't possible. She had exhausted all her energy, simply escaping from the carriage where her parents' bodies lay. Now she would die only a few hundred paces away from their final resting place. Would her mutilated carcass be discovered in days hence and taken back to her family's house? Or would she and her parents be embalmed and sealed away within the mausoleum? Meike did not much like this thought. Her family's mausoleum was a terrifying place, full of somber stone angels and spider webs. It was quiet, being situated among tall trees, but its quietude was not at all relaxing. Its quiet was deep, fathomless silence of death. Meike did not want to die. She knew how she would continue to live on with both her parents slaughtered. She knew not how she would continue to live on with both her parents slaughtered before her eyes, but she did not want to succumb as they had in the forest, full of fog. She wanted to go on living, for her sake and for Henny's, though not necessarily for Walter's. God, they're getting closer. We need to keep running. Come on, Meike. But it's not like like the gathering flame of a candle, the last of her energy had been expended. Meike's foot caught in a tangled tree root, which jutted from the ground like a bear trap, and she fell. Her hand, which was slick with sweat, slipped free from Henny's. Fingers extended forth, plumbing the mitts for Henny, but to little avail. Meike! Henny's voice echoed in Meike's ears, shrill, frantic alongside her own pulse. Her heart juddered in her chest, hard and as though meaning to stop altogether, but it did little good. Her head smacked against the ground with a dull, anticlimactic thud, her auburn curls strewn across the scattered leaves like broken twigs. Meike's teeth hit against her tongue. She tasted copper. Her vision swam. Meike, oh God, Meike! Get up, please get up. And then everything went black. Act 1, The Night That Never Ended. Yeah, this is a nice vibe for spooky month. What? When Meike finally awoke, she was greeted by a dull, crushing pain that gripped her skull like a vice. Brackish taste akin to pond water filled her mouth. With one hand, she clasped her head and she coughed. Meike's body shuddered and her lungs burned. It took a minute for her coughing fit subsided. But once it did, Meike began to glance around uneasily at her surroundings. Oh no, lesbian vampire, so scary. Yes. She hoped that her immediate surroundings might shed some light upon her predicament, but her hopes were in vain. Meike did not recognize any of the geometry which encaged her thus. The floor which she was sitting by, why she was sitting on the floor of all things, was made of stone, which felt hard and cold, uncompromising. The walls, too, were made of stone, as was the ceiling, which felt very far away. A wooden cot pushed close against one of the walls, but it was steeped in shadows, Meike could scarcely make it out. There's a chamber pot lying by the cot, which, upon closer inspection, was empty, but its rim and sides were strained with caked-on filth. A truly unpleasant odor exuded from the chamber pot, which made Meike's eyes sting. It was fortunate that she had no immediate desire to relieve herself, for she had no desire to use this commodity. That quick examination of the room, though, really, it was more like a cell, showed Meike that, save for the cot and chamber pot, it was utterly desolate. There was no other furniture to be seen, no shelves, no cupboards, nor even a proper bed. There was no mirror either, so Meike could not see herself, but perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. Yes, gay vampire time. I thought this was an Eat the Rich game. Well, it might be. I mean, if it's lesbian vampires. Okay, with compromise. True. Meike doubted that she would be at her best now, being so very in pain, so very exhausted. Yes, we are doing time. We in jail now. We're in gay baby jail. She was so cold she could feel goosebumps rippling across her flesh, and her teeth were clattered badly. Meike wound her arms around her middle and shivered sadly. It was not only the chamber pot that stunk, the very air itself was rank, heavy with a stench of unwashed bodies and general decay. This room, this cell, reeked of death. How had she come to such a place? What had happened to her? Meike could remember sitting alongside her mother and her father in their carriage as it bore them through the forest, and then there was the most this most pivotal moment of her memories failed her. Meike could recall nothing else. Trauma! Now what was she to do? Had her parents been there, they would have given her instructions. They always seemed to know what Meike ought to be doing at any given time. But they were not there, neither was Henny. Meike was all alone. Henny had been with her, Meike was certain before. Before what? Why could she not remember a thing? Oh, Meike thought sorrowfully. If only she were made of stone, then perhaps her head would not hurt so much. It really did feel like her skull might explode, not from pain, though the pain still remained, but from raw, unbridled fear. Meike had often dreamed of stealing away from her parents' home to embark on a brand new life, unfettered by expectations. She never wished for this. Tears began to trickle down Meike's cheeks in crystalline droplets. Cats are being menaces. They got the zoomies right now. They scored tracks in the dirt which caked her cheeks and dropped one by one to the floor on which she sat. Her head bowed, her fingers splayed against the stones. Meike sobbed, and she sobbed until... What? What's going on? A soft voice spoke amongst the teeming shadows. Meike could not see the speaker. She could scarcely see at all, given the darkness, and now her own tears. But she recognized the familiar cadence. The voice belonged to Henny, her darling Henny. Meike's dear friend was here too, in the stone cell which smelt of death. Though Meike feared for Henny, she felt relief too, bubbling up inside her. She was not alone after all. Henny? Meike crawled forth on her hands and knees, being too exhausted to stand, and stared into the shadows. Listen, everybody's gay here. Let's be real. Meike. Henny replied after a pause, for the voice, though languorous, belonged to her quite unmistakably. There came a rustle from the darkness, shifting clothing, perhaps a skirt, as Henny sat. A shaft of moonlight spilled through the singular barred window hewn high into the wall of their cell, and finally Meike afforded a view of her maid. Though christened Henrique, Meike had always called her beloved maid Henny. It seemed a more appropriate appellation for so cheery a woman. For Henny, come rain or shine, was rarely seen without a smile. Henny was not smiling now, however. She was sitting upon her wooden cot, which Meike had first spied during their brief examination of her surroundings. What she had taken at first was a crumpled blanket, must have been the body of her own dear maid, obscured from her by the shifting shadows. Henny's face looked woefully weary, and it had lost much of its usual pinkness. Oh, hi, bud. Hi, Jake. Yeah, go eat your food. Her apron, once white, now stained and sullied with dirt. Henny's shoes had been black and sensible, but now they're mired with filth, and her socks were rucked up about her ankles. Henny's wide eyes were wide and displayed so much white in her. Her irises seemed lost in them. This lent her a startled look, like a small wooden animal, a look which was heightened further by her knotted and tangled tresses. Henny's hands, which she held at front, clasped together, were trembling like those of a woman thrice her age. Henny looked like an awful sight, but Meike knew she could hardly have been any better herself. Henny's hair might have been a mess, but at least she kept it short. There was not so very much of Henny's dark tresses to be worried into a state of disorder. Meike's own hair, meanwhile, was long and curly, and though she had worn it in a chignon, she now felt it straggling loosely around her shoulders. The back of her neck prickled either from the cold or from a dislodged hairpin or two. Perhaps that was why Henny stared at Meike, so once she regained her own sense of equilibrium, she thought she had seen a ghost. My God, Meike. Henny looked so alarmed. Meike felt almost ashamed. Meike was no stranger to shame. She felt it frequently. What are you doing? You little chaos gremlins. Playing in the curtains again. She felt it frequently, in fact, when she was with her mother, but it rarely raised its ugly head in Henny's presence. Yeah, they're being little mischief fiends. Nothing new there. Hi, Jake. What you doing, handsome? You observing the babies? They up to mischief. My pretty boy. He looks like he's deciding whether or not he wants to join in. Since Meike's girlhood, Henny had been her one staunch, steadfast companion. You bet they are. They're always chaos. Always agents of chaos. She was the only person Meike knew who took Meike for who she was, rather than wishing, often aloud to her face, that she could be more appreciative, more amenable, more effusive, more like a lady and less like herself. Henny did not want Meike to be more. She only wanted Meike to be Meike. Did that mean then Meike did not look like Meike in this moment? But who else did she resemble, if not herself? What had happened to her? Are you alright, Meike? Oh, you look at your poor face. Henny rose from the wooden cot, which creaked and crouched before her friend. Reaching out, still shaking, she cupped Meike's cheeks in her fingers and said, "You're bleeding." "Am I?" "Yes, you've a nasty cut beneath your right eye and your cheek." Henny sucked a breath, her expression grim. "It's all banged up. You're positively black and blue." "Oh, I hadn't realized. I'm sorry, Henny." "What?" Henny had procured a handkerchief from her skirt pocket. It fortunately was devoid of dirt. Paused in her dabbing at Meike's face, while looking at Meike with bemusement. "Why are you apologizing to me, you daft goose? You've done nothing but to feel sorry for." I don't know, I'm just sorry for making you worry, I suppose." "Aw, think not of it. It's my job to worry about you. I'm your maid, remember?" "Well, of course I remember that much. My thoughts might be in a state of disarray for the present, but I would never forget you. You are much more than my maid, Henny. You're my friend, too. My dearest friend. And I could very well say the same about you, but that's what hurts, seeing you in such a frightful state. Do I look so very bad?" "Well now." Henny cast her gaze over Meike's face, her brown eyes brightening with familiar mischief as she did. "That depends on how honest you want me to be." "Oh dear. Do I look as bad as all that?" "You've certainly looked better. Your face is banged up as a windfall apple." "An apple?" Meike shook her head in wonderment. I only hope that the apple isn't ridden with worms." "I don't think you've anything to worry about on that score, at least." "Well, that is a relief. I suppose things could always be worse." "Right you are. That's the spirit." you're still alive, and so am I, and we're together. That ought to count for something, although... Henny finished wiping the worst of the congealed blood and dirt from Meike's cheeks and then drew back her soiled handkerchief gripped tight in her hand. Her expression newly dour, she said after a moment's pause. I am afraid that your parents mayn't have been so fortunate. What? Meike's heart leapt in her chest at this somber announcement. What happened to them, Penny? Do you know what's going on? You don't? I recalled that we were traveling to Augsburg to visit my fiancé, but for how we came here... Meike closed her eyes in hopes of remembering something, but again, nothing came. Her mind remained stubbornly blank as features of a snow-capped mountain, while Flora blanketed in untrampled whiteness. I'm afraid I'm drawing a blank. Cannot remember. Not a single thing? Nothing. I see. Henny grit her teeth for a few moments, her eyes dark. She seemed to be weighing upon her words as a baker might measure flour and sugar before speaking. That's not such a surprise, I suppose. You hit your head pretty hard back there. It might be for the best you can't remember all the gory details. I wish I could forget what happened myself, but... Henny's voice trailed away as awkwardly she gripped her kerchief. That kerchief had been the only clean thing in Meike and Henny's cell, but now it too was ruined, streaked with brown and red. How deep was the cut that Meike sustained? How much had she bled? This too remained a mystery. Meike did not know. There seemed much all of a sudden she was ignorant of. She felt so very unworldly that she might have been a little girl again, and enthused after she had successfully stolen the key to her family's mausoleum. Meike had not known, as she stood in the chill entrance of the mausoleum, that she was about to lower herself into the subterranean world of death and decay, though part of her had wondered. Henny. Meike took Henny's hand in her own, her fingernails cracked, discolored and dusted with dirt, digging into her skin. What happened? Please tell me, I want to know. Yes, I thought you might. That does make things might complicated, though. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. No, they're fine. Let them be in the window. Henny looked to Meike beneath her half-lidded eyes, her expression distressed, uncommonly pale and pinched. Promise you won't take against me for what I'm about to tell you. I've gone through a lot tonight already, and I would be the straw to break the camel's back. Henny, please. You should know that it's a trivial concern. I'm fully aware that none of this is your fault. You've only ever sought to protect me. I have no better friend than you, not in all the world. And it's precisely because I want to protect you that I don't want to go into all this. I know it'll upset you, it upsets me too. It's an upsetting situation all around. It's rotten, really. What happened to all the people? what people are capable of, but... Henny, perhaps sensing her own distress, paused. She inhaled, then, in a calmer tone, she said, "Just how much do you want to know, Meike? How much is there to know?" "Oh, I remembered everything. I'll always remember tonight, I expect. It made quite an impression. Horrible things always do." "Oh dear, are things truly that dire?" "They're pretty bad, yes." "Give me a abridged account then. I've no need to hear everything." "Right you are." Henny bowed her head in acquiescence, her face half swallowed by shadows. The band of light which had penetrated their drab cell had long since been extinguished, the moon obscured beneath the rolling fog. It was cold in their cell. Meike could not cease her shivers. Even her teeth felt cold, like shards of ice implanted into her gums. Henny's proximity served as something of a comfort, but it would not rid Meike of her trepidation. She knew once Henny relayed the past events to her, her life would no longer be the same. Everything would change. It was changing already, in fact so quickly that Meike hardly had a chance to gather her bearings. She felt lost, adrift, and hopelessly afraid. "I'm sorry to tell you this, Meike. During our travels, the carriage, it was attacked by bandits." "What? No." "Yes, they came creeping out of the fog like, I don't know, monsters from children's story maybe, but much scarier. They waylaid the carriage, then stormed it. They drew their daggers, threatened your father, and when he refused to comply, well..." Henny's expression twisted. "They stabbed him." "What?" Meike drew in a sharp inhalation of air, her whole body tensed. She was expecting as much before Henny gave her gruesome tale, but the news still shook her. Evidently, she had not been so prepared to hear the worst as she had imagined. "Oh God, not my papa, my poor papa. Don't tell me he didn't..." "I'm sorry, but..." Henny sniffled. "It's as you're probably suspecting. His wound was a deep one, and he died." "Dead? My papa dead?" "Dead as a doornail, I'm afraid. I didn't hang around to see what had happened, but, well, it happened so quick, I don't think he suffered at least. And my mama, what of her? Don't tell me she also..." Henny did not reply, but the discomfort which crossed her face left Meike with no doubts as to her mother's fate. In one brief night, both Meike's parents had been slaughtered. Now she was an orphan. "And what of us, Henny? How did we escape? I find it hard to believe the bandits would just let us go." "Oh, I'm sure we would have joined your parents if we'd sat still, like good little girls, but I didn't want to do that. I took your hand while they were busy with your mother, and we ran away. We fled through the woods, but the bandits took chase. Pretty damn... sorry, darn quick. It was dark and the fog was thick. I could hardly see what was happening. At one point, you tripped and fell. That's how you got the nasty cut in your poor forehead. I was dragged down with you. We lay there on the ground in the dirt while the bandits tramped about looking for us. I figured we were both a couple of goners. I started to say my prayers and the Lord Almighty, but then... We survived? Yes, we survived. This, Meike supposed, was not such a surprise. It went without saying, really, that they had survived. Otherwise, they would have not been sitting in this ghastly cell speaking to one another. Either the bandits had spared them, which seemed unlikely, or somebody had come to their defense. Who would have been wandering the woods so very late at night, however? Meike could hardly credit it. Their escape must have been the stuff the fantasies were made of. And do you know how we escaped, Henny? I know what my eyes saw, but my eyes can be trusted. But if my eyes can be trusted or not, well... that's another matter altogether. I think I might have bumped my head myself. It was also peculiar. At the time, it seemed like a miracle. But looking back at it, that ain't the right word. Miracle suggests God and all his angels, that there was naught holy about this. It was right proper mess, really, a total bloodbath. But blood? Yes, there was blood, and lots of it. It's hard for me to explain, but... all I know is, in one moment we were sprawled upon the dirt, and you go unconscious, half out of it, my mind with fright, as the bandits approached, and then the next they were gone. Gone? But where and how? Did they run away? Not necessarily. Not of their own free will, like. The fog parted, you see, and then this figure, this woman, she appeared so quick, it was like she'd sprung up from the earth. She wasn't very tall, I don't think she was at least, and she was very skinny, but the way she looked, the way she moved, there was something unnatural about her. I didn't get a very good look at what happened next, but I saw her go after those bandits. I think there was at least 4 of them, but the woman soon took care of them. There was so much blood and a lot of mud. It stunk to high heaven, it did. Brought tears to my eyes. That woman, though, the woman in white, she didn't seem fussed at all. She stood there once she had finished beneath the moon like nothing had happened, and then he pressed her fingers to her brow and overwhelmed shook her head. I don't remember now it's after that. I think I must have fainted. When I finally woke up, I found myself here. It was your crying that woke me up. I've never been able to rest easy while you're in tears, Meike. Yes, I know, you've always been so good and so kind. Thank you, Henny. Meike chanced a smile, though the muscles around her mouth felt atrophied, worn away, following the news of her parents' demise and her own near brush with the Reaper's sight. Damn, these bitches gay. Good for them. True. I've no idea what I would do without you. It sounds like you saved me. From the bandits, I suppose I did. But I wasn't much use when you took that nasty spill. There's no way I would have been able to carry you to safety. Not when we're all turned around in this woods. I had no idea where we were. I think I scraped my own shin too. My ankle aches. We'd have been goners if that woman hadn't appeared. But now I'm talking about it, it doesn't sound real. I can't think of anyone who would be able to beat 4 men in a test of strength, not even your own Mademoiselle Blanchard. Meike's smile widened despite the severity of the situation. She found, to her surprise, she was even able to laugh. It was a weak laugh which contained little in the way of mirth, but it was sincere. Henny never failed to cheer her up. She must have had a knack for it. Meike was too old to believe in magic, but when she was with Henny, she sometimes wondered. Are you sure it was a woman who fended off those bandits? Perhaps it was some sort of animal instead. You failed to perceive it in the fog. That could be it. Like I said, my mind's a mess. I feel like I've lost a good 10 years off my life, though. Here, Henny smiled grimly in the matter of all survivors after witnessing something horrid. That's better than having it cut short altogether. We must be thankful for the small mercies. Yes, even if our lives were saved at my parents' expense. Meike squeezed her eyes shut. She could feel tears beating upon her lashes anew, but this time she was able to subdue them. The news of her parents' death was a heavy burden to bear, but Meike was not having witnessed their final moments. Found it hard to imagine. It still did not seem quite real, despite the rawness of Henry's account. The shock of it all perhaps had blunted her senses. It would take a while for her parents' passing to truly register. When it did, however, Meike did not doubt the tears would come thicker and faster than before. It had not always been so, but her childhood adventures in her family's crypt had left her something of a crybaby. It was fortunate that she had Henny by her side to dry her eyes. What would she have done without her trusty maid? And now then, Meike inhaled, her chest rising beneath her torn gown, and glanced about. Where do you suppose we are? And how do you suppose we got here? That's a good question. I've been wondering about that too, ever since we awoke. It's not the nicest digs, is it? Not particularly, no. It's awfully drab, and it's damp too. I'm freezing. You poor thing, come here. Henny shifted closer to Meike. She drew her arms about her, holding her close as so to protect her from the frigid air. Henny glanced about as did Meike. She squinted into the shadows as though they might reveal more than they had initially upon her initial inspection, namely the wooden cot and the chamber pot beside it. To Meike's disappointment, she found the cell quite unchanged. It was every bit as sparse as she recalled. The shadows did little to mask this fact, and still it stank. Goodness me, it's not much to look at, is it? Might as well be in a prison cell. I think that might be what this is. Henny drew back from Meike, legs crossed beneath her upon the stone floor, and frowned. I reckon you're right. I wonder who brought us here. You and me both. It's nice of our mysterious benefactress, to rescue us, though they can't be all that kind if they're gonna let us suffer in here. You'd think they could at least put us up in a nicer room. I'm not expecting first-class accommodations, but you deserve better than this, Meike. This place isn't fit for rats, let alone people. It's all right. It's better than being dead, at least, even if these lodgings are mite uncomfortable. Only a mite? Well, Meike corrected herself with a smile. Quite a bit, if I'm being honest. Meike drew her arms around her legs and knees beneath her chin and said, When I woke up, I was lying on the floor. On the floor? Henny's eyebrows shot up to her forehead until they met her hairline. The gesture was so exaggerated it managed to bring another smile to Meike's lips, despite how very dire their situation was. I suppose it makes better sense there being only one bed, but oh, that is too much. I can't believe they'd fling you about like a sack of sawdust. Many unbelievable things have happened tonight. Our benefactor must have been bucking the trend. Some benefactor? When I get my hands on them, I'll give them a what for. Don't, Henny. It wouldn't do to pick a fight with whomever brought us here. Wouldn't want to anger them, not when we're at their mercy. But why? But that makes us sound like captives. Is that not what we are? The cell, after all, and what we have no means of escaping. We're being treated as prisoners. I know, but it still stings. I don't care about me, but I don't want to see you being treated like a convict. Not when you've been through so much. You've been through worse. At least I don't remember what happened, unlike you. And you're the one who will be saddled with the consequences. Poor Meike. It was your parents, not mine, who were... Well, I don't expect there's much point in trying to suss out whose suffering was worse. Whose suffering is more than who. As it stands, we're both in this together. I won't abandon you, Meike, so try not to worry. Keep your chin up, we'll get through this. Yes, everything's sussy. Thank you, Henny. I almost believe it coming from you. You should. I don't say things I don't mean, you know. Now, let's see. Maybe things aren't as dire as they look. There could be a way to escape yet. Henny rose to her feet, though unsteadily, and did a circuit of the cell. The shadows made it seem larger than it was, for they obscured the walls, but it did not take Henny many steps to canvass the full length of the dingy room. She pressed her fingertips to the wall, then her ear, though the stonework might whisper unto her their weaknesses, but her efforts were in vain. The walls held firm, as did the steady slats which crisscrossed their entrance. Henny took the bars between her fingers and squeezed experimentally, but they refused to yield. Oh, come on! Frustrated now, Henny gave the bars a kick. The tip of her shoe collided with them, losing clods of dirt from her soles, but... damn it all! The bars, as before, did not budge. They were quite impermeable. Sighing, Henny soon changed tack. She moved from the door and glanced up at the window. It was similarly barred, too high up to reach, and much too small to squeeze through. It seemed a miracle almost, the window being so mean, allowed any moonlight at all to spill into the cell when the clouds and fog shifted. And? Meike asked when a disenchanted Henny flopped back down beside her with a rustle of her skirts. Did you uncover anything? Not all, except we were trapped more than I thought. I thought you might have come to that conclusion, yes? God. Henny kicked off her right shoe and began to massage her feet, with which had begun to throb. This is a rum situation. I wonder what we're to do. I don't think there's much we can do other than wait. I suppose you're right. I can't say I like the thought of that, but though we're sitting ducks here, I feel we ought to be taking some kind of action. Henny looked about the cell once more, then sighed. But I'm drawing a blank here. I can't think of anything we could do. I'm sorry for being so hopeless, Meike. I meant to look after you, but I'm a total loss. Don't apologize, dear Henny. I feel better simply being with you. That's something at least. I wish I could be of some real use, though. You are of real use. Without you, I'd be an unconscionable mess sweeping on the floor. Well, we can't have that. We can't be having that. It breaks my heart to see you cry. Much as it breaks mine to see you self-flagellate or so over something that is not your fault. What's up, Nora? What's Tenuro doing? You're so cute. What's up? Do you need something? Yeah? Do you need to go potty? Right, give me a sec, chat. I gotta let the dog out. Stare at the pretty ladies. Need a noodle. She needs things. I'll be right back. I've returned. Have a good time, Jim Jim. Alright, let's get comfy again. Settle in for more of this gothic gay. Hi, G. How you doing? Little punk. She came up chewing some cords. It's not what you do, baby. If you do it again, I'll kidnap you. Put you in gay baby jail. You're doing it again, I'm gonna put you in gay baby jail. Yeah, you better run. Little brat. Mischief maker. Okay. Neko, you gonna go get your sister? Go get her? Goobers. Cats being cats. It was funny, I had to pick them both up to let Nora back in. It was so funny. Touché. Now what we're well and truly stuck here, I suppose we ought to make the best of it, although I have a bad feeling about this place. It gives me the creeps. I don't know who imprisoned us here, or what cause. They've no manners to speak of. Why, it's almost as if... Annie began, but she found herself unable to finish that sentence. A sound issued forth from the darkness, emitting from beyond their tightly sealed cell. It was a faint sound, like that of far-off rain, but Henny still heard it. Sour air began to still and silent. It sounded like a scream. Good God! Henry sat up straighter, her fingers digging into her arches, eyes alert. What in the world was that? I suppose that was just the wind? Do you really think so? Yes, I imagine. Meike answered in the affirmative, although deep down, both she and Henny knew the truth. That had not been the wind, it had been too raw, too pained, too, though faint, unmistakably human. There were other cells, or so it seemed, besides theirs. Others were incarcerated, others whom, right now, were being tortured by unknown hands. Meike could feel the fine hairs on the back of her neck standing up. Her body, which felt constrained by her stays, quivered. All she could do was sit there, her legs pressed to her chest, like a fitful young girl, as she murmured, more for her own benefit than Henny's. It was the wind. That's all it is. It's the wind. It's nothing to worry about. It's nothing, really. Everything will be fine. No obvious way to escape and very little to do, Meike and Henny had no choice but to idle their time away. They sat upon the floor together. Could Meike supposed have sat upon the wooden cot, but it did not seem sturdy enough for the both of them. with their legs folded primely like two little girls conducting a make-believe tea party. Henny had at first balked at the thought of her mistress sitting upon the floor like a plebeian, but Meike's dress was already so dirty it scarce mattered. The two women did not, however, abandon themselves to inertia. Henny knew that they had to do something to take their minds off the ghastly predicament. Fortunately, Henny was not empty-handed. She had in her pocket, alongside the kerchief she had used to wipe Meike's cheek, a pack of cards. These cards were bent at the corners. They remained perfectly functional. For what a better way to use their time, Henny proposed to Meike a game of Joker, which she soon accepted. Henny cut the deck and dealt out the cards, her motions deft and despite her trembling. Both Henny and Meike were familiar with card games. They often played rounds to pass the hours. There being precious few amusements that ladies of Meike's caliber were permitted to do. Were it not for Henny and her games, Meike feared she would have lost her mind to fright. The two women played several rounds of Joker, examining their decks, dispensing of cards. The game did not require a great degree of tactical thinking, but it helped alleviate some of Meike's concerns. I'd see you later, then. It could not alas alleviate the cold, but Meike had been shivering for so long that she had almost grown accustomed to it. She had been in the dank, miserable cell for so long she scarcely remembered how it even felt to be warm. Had her journey to Augsburg continued unimpeded, she would now be sitting by the fire in Walter Gerhardt's living room, or else tucked up in one of the many guest bedrooms with a warming pan at her feet. Though Augsburg and Walter Gerhardt seemed very far away to Meike now, being confined and thus in a prison cell. How long had she been sitting with Henny on the floor, shivering? Meike did not know. She could not tell. She had lost all concept of time and its passing. It had become nebulous to her, unformed, unfixed. All Meike really knew, in her infinite ignorance, that was the night seemed hopelessly long. She hopelessly small and insignificant. There was no clock in Meike's cell, and neither she nor Henny carried timepieces upon them. The only means Meike had of tracking the advancement of the hour was the sliver of sky she could see beyond the narrow window situated high above her head. She could recall that the sky had been dark upon her waking, and it remained so now, 3 games of Joker later. The moon, which emerged from the fog at irregular intervals, shone its pallid light upon Meike's head and upon her hand of cards, lighting her Joker to his wide, rictus grin. Meike had never much cared for the Joker, and Henny's trusty pack of cards, whose expression unnerved her. Every once in a while, as she played, Meike spared a few glances upwards, at the barred window. She could not hope to guess the hour, but she knew it was late. It had been late when the bandits had descended upon her parents, and it was late now. It was still late now. Perhaps 1 hour had passed since the attack, or 2. It could have barely been an advanced hour of the night, or it could have been, by the same token, the very, very early hours of the following morning. calendar may have shifted already from one day to the next, but Meike was none the wiser. Meike could not believe, though she tilted her head, that the sun had any intention of soon putting on an appearance. The darkness which surrounded within her cell was too complete for it. The cards in her hands almost inscrutable without the aid of the moon's light. Meike could not hear either the telltale twittering of birdsong, which often announced the coming dawn. When did the birds begin to chirp among the boughs of the trees beyond her bedroom window? Meike could not recall, but she thought it must have been around 6 in the morning. Meike had gone to bed at 10 every night, like a dutiful daughter. Despite her advancing years, she had often found it hard to sleep for a full, unbroken 8 hours. She would arise at odd hours, at 1 or 2 or 3, her head full of thoughts, and often she found it hard to sleep again. Mood. When it occurred, Meike would rise from bed and sit by her windowsill, her forehead in the summer pressed to the glass that always helped cool her, and her errant thoughts alongside it. Oh, how her mind raced. It seemed quite unfair, really, that she should be cursed with so many thoughts when her parents demanded only that she be perfect, passive doll of a woman with no opinions at all. With weary eyes, Meike looked out to her back garden steeped in shadow, and cobblestone streets beyond it. The others might have found the night in its fathomless stillness uncomfortable, but Meike quite enjoyed it. At least she did not have to perform when all else were abed. She was free to feel and think as she wanted without the fear of being reproached. Meike, her mother had often scolded her as she sat in the dining room in comfortable family meals. "You're furrowing your brows again. Have I not warned you against it? It is most unattractive. What must her Gerford think if he should see you now?" Meike would always apologize for these faults of hers, no matter how slight, but inwardly she smoldered. She did not like being spoken down to as if she were a child. Now, at least, after her night's horrors, she no longer needed to worry about furrowing her brow in an unbecoming way as she sipped her soup. She no longer had a mother to scold her. She would never see her mother nor father again. And what of Walter? Of that, Meike had no earthly idea. "Oh, this is ridiculous," Annie groused while examining her own cards. "We ought to be at her Gerhardt's right now, safe as houses. We weren't so far from Osber, at least I don't think we were, when we were attacked. Why did those bandits have to go after us?" "They were just unfortunate, I suppose." "I can't imagine the bandits meant specifically to target us. We just happened to be there." "You're probably right, but..." Goodness. And I gotta sneeze. Maybe. Nope, it's gone now. Okay. Let me hydrate real quick. Of all that awful luck. At least you've had a fair run during our game. You've beaten me out soundly during every single hand. Huh, well, true. I suppose I should thank the heaven for all small mercies, eh? Henny smiled at Meike's attempt to cheer her, but it didn't last. Both Henny's smile and Meike's cheer were half-hearted, and soon they were swallowed by the sinister darkness of the soul. It's a shame I don't feel more thankful. I wonder what Herr Gertard would make of this. He'd be off his head, I'm sure, if he knew that the state you're being kept in, Meike. I'm in range too, for you and him. You deserve far better than this. You're Von Essen, for crying out loud. The person who's holding us here will feel mighty sorry when they realize who you are. You're a real lady. Maybe. Meike's reply was vague in both tone and meaning. Not even Meike herself was sure that she meant to disparage Henny's optimistic assertion that her status as a lady would grant her any favors with her captors, or whether she was a lady at all. Meike had been born to a noble family, it was true, with lineage which could be traced back centuries, but the Von Essens were not what they had been. Half a century of poor financial decisions and a grandfather with a compulsive gambling addiction had led to the squandering of much of the Von Essens' wealth. While still in possession of their family home and a veritable fleet of maidservants, the family's finances had been in dire state ever since Meike's girlhood. Though not openly wanting for cash, Meike's parents had made a good many purchases based on their family's prestige rather than figures in their bank account. Meike's wedding to Herr Gertard had been an attempt to shore up with the family's wealth before they could fall from grace altogether. But that now seemed an impossibility. How could Meike wed Walter when she was incarcerated? If Meike had loved Walter, she surely would have shed tears for such a cruel fate. And as it was, however, she was curiously calm. What did she care about how Walter Gertard felt? She barely knew him. Well, not to worry. Herr Gertard must be sitting in his drawing room now, wondering where in the blazes we are. I've no idea what time it is. That Meike thought glumly made two of them. But we should have arrived in Augsburg ages ago. Herr Gertard is sure to send out a search party before long. He'll be worried sick about you, Meike. Do you really think so? Absolutely. I mean, he's your fiancé. He's got to be worried. You're such a sweet thing. I don't see how he couldn't. Well, thank you, Henny. I appreciate it. Don't thank me, Meike. I'm just stating the facts. If I was a man and I had a fiancé like you can bet that I wouldn't let you out of my sight. That's very gay. Perhaps it's a good thing that I'm here with you, then. You at least know I'm alright. Yes, you are. And I thank heaven on high for it. You know I'd do anything to keep you safe, Meike. I know. Meike could well believe that coming from Henny. When it came to Henny's claims about Walter, however, Meike was less certain. Oh, pretty sussy man. What did she know about Walter really, other than his age and his occupation, and how fabulously excessively wealthy he was? Meike had met Walter only on 3 past occasions. They had exchanged almost as many words. The man was a stranger to her. Meike's desire to marry him was inversely proportional with her parents' desire to see her walking down the aisle. Meike had been dreading her visit to Osberg for well over a month. Now it had been terminated. She felt a perverse sort of relief. Part of Meike had begun to wonder, as she sat in her cell, whether the bandits' attack had brought it some good alongside all bad. But that, Meike chastised herself, was hopelessly cruel. Were her parents' lives truly worth that little to her? Was it enough that she may never see Walter Gerhardt again, but she would never see her mother nor father again either? It was not a fair trade, not by any stretch of the imagination. How could she ever have thought of such a thing? It must, Meike thought grimly, be because I am a bad daughter. My mother was right, I am ungrateful. Perhaps this, then, is the punishment from God. I never appreciated them while they were alive, and now they are dead. How cruel and callous I am. Henny might have called Meike sweet, but Meike found this hard to believe. A lifetime beneath her mother's iron implicated rule had taught Meike how to be submissive, but it had not taught her sweetness. She smiled and simpered because it was expected of her, but late at night, when she could not sleep, she seethed. Meike had resented her parents and Walter alongside them for a long time. That Henny did not know. This was perturbing. Henny must not have known Meike at all that well, after all. Or perhaps Meike thought with a shiver it was she who did not truly know herself. Meike and Henny sat in their cell for what could have been minutes or hours or even days while whiling away the time. By God, there was so much time, with continued unending incessant games of Joker. Meike's heart was not in the game, her head being otherwise occupied, and Henny trounced her soundly 12-1. Henny was better than Meike at card games in general, so this came as a little surprise. Meike was accustomed to losing, and accepted her failures with good grace. There are more important things in life than card games. And in any event, Meike had never cared for the jokers in Henny's deck. She preferred to be rid of them. Hi, Morningstar. How's it going? You can. There's an application on Steam. I think it's just called Visual Novel Maker. I've been tempted, honestly, to turn one of my stories into a visual novel, but that's work. A lot of work. Little note happened during these dead, empty hours. Nobody came to visit Henny and Meike in their cell, and their faint screams of both women had heard, though Meike was staunchly determined to think of it as the wind, did not see fit to impinge upon their solitude. Skies beyond their prison cell, meanwhile, remained dark and bereaved, like a bereaved widow outfitted with mourning clothes. The cold remained oppressive, the stone floor uncomfortable, and Meike found little in the way of relief, no matter how much she shifted. Meike had begun to wonder in a detached way, as Henny launched into their 14th round of Joker, whether they would ever meet their rescuer. True. Yeah, you need art for that shit. They do have, like, pre-made art, though, if you're doing, like, your own stuff. But, I'd be able to make shit for it, but it's so much effort. I tried once, but I never got around to, finishing anything like that. Maybe one day, when I free up more time. I have too many other things on my plate right now. Because I do own it. I just never got to the point of actually making one. Perhaps whoever had hauled them from the forest had done so, not as an act of kindness, but as a means of prolonging their suffering. Maybe they meant to keep them locked in their cell, alone, until time itself slowed to a trickle, then ceased, the squalid stone walls tumbling down around them, crushed their emaciated corpses and debris. Sounds like a Slay the Princess ending. In fact, I was. But soon, shockingly soon, or so it seemed, despite all of the interminable waiting, Neko found her hypothesis proved wrong. She could hear above the sound of Henny's shuffling of the deck a sound. Footsteps. The footsteps were soft enough at first, but Meike wondered whether she had imagined them. But as seconds elapsed, they became louder still, until even Henny heard them. Goodness me! Henny fumbled with her cards and threw them down, face up, red hearts and black spades spilt across the stone. Can you hear that, Meike? Yes, I can. Somebody must be coming. A rescuer from the woods, do you think? It could be our rescuer, yes, maybe. Meike did not finish this thought. Her saliva felt too thick in her throat like tar, and she shivered. She did not want to extinguish the hope that she could see flickering now in Henny's eyes. That would have been cruel. Henny's head swiveled to the grated iron door, excitable as a puppy, wide-eyed. She peered through the shadows. This is a turn for the better. I was beginning to worry they'd forgotten all about us. I can't wait to come face to face with them. I'll be sure to tell them exactly what I think about their so-called hospitality. You said that once before, Henny, and I wish you wouldn't. I don't want to anger them. Oh, stuff and nonsense. I'm sure it'll be fine. If they wanted to harm us, they had plenty of chances to do it already, surely. That is true, but... Footsteps drew closer still, echoing about the stone walls, echoing too inside Meike's skull. The footsteps could represent only two things. They would mean salvation if they were lucky, but Meike found it difficult to believe this. Neither she nor Henny had been very lucky that night, despite Henny's continued winning hands in Joker. It seems far more likely that these footsteps would bring about yet more suffering, and sure enough. Well, would you look at what the cat dragged in? The voice cut through Meikei's musings, and it was a proud, haughty one, the syllables polished to perfection like cut glass. The voice belonged quite obviously to a woman, and given her pronunciation, she must have been well bred. Perhaps their rescuer, too, was a lady, a Von such and such, as Meikei was, from a family whose ancestral home was vast and old, and grand enough to have its very own dungeon. Whereas most nobility used their subterranean storage spaces for wine cellars, this family seemed to be preferred to taking prisoners. The thought did not fill Meikei with much confidence about her mysterious rescuer. Anxiously, she glanced up to meet the source of said voice, and when she did... Oh. Meikei could not help but gasp in surprise. "There's money!" The owner of the voice, who now stood upon the opposite side of the cell door, was not at all what Meikei had imagined. She was shorter than Meikei had expected, shorter than Meikei herself, who was dwarfed by her wealthier, significant older fiancé, and slender, with her cheekbones high, her neck not dissimilar to the stem of a flower. Mother, sorry. Her skin was frighteningly pale, like a corpse, and beneath her eyes, Meikei could see dark rings similar to those she often sported during long nights at her bedroom window, unable to sleep. The woman, or was she a girl, had hair so fair it was almost white, which almost seemed to glow in the moonlight. The hair was not worn, as most women did, in a chignon, but instead it was loose. It tumbled about her shoulders in waves, while disarrayed in manner which she should have made Meikei's mother swoon from the sheer impropriety of it all. Insomniac spotted. They can be insomniacs together. The girl's appearance, but was she a girl? Was strikingly not only because of her interminable age, but because of her eyes, widely spaced and fringed with the most luxurious of lashes. Her irises were not brown like Henny's, nor blue like Meikei's. They were not green, nor hazel, nor gray, or any of the other shades Meikei had seen faces of her family's servants and attendants at their boutiques, to which her mother took her, the congregation at her local parish. Her irises were instead bright red, so much that they bordered on the visceral. These lovely irises were redder than blood which had seeped from Meikei's sliced cheek, which had now congealed and seemed full of violence. The girl was a perfect stranger to Meikei, but her eyes told them more pleasant chit-chat could. She was not normal. Meikei knew instinctively as she gazed upon her that she could keep her distance if she could, but this only made her conversely feel even more enchanted. She could not look away from her. It was as though her captor had placed her under a spell. That woman! Henny shifted back, her skirts shifting against the ground. She's the one I told you about, Meikei, the one from the woods. She's the one who fought off those bandits. I thought it was unbelievable what I saw, but now I know it wasn't a dream. She's really real. She's killed all those men. She's a monster. A monster? Meikei murmured under her breath, her expression one of perplexity. Had Henny delivered this indictment against any other, Meikei would have thought her guilty of exaggeration, for she could believe such a claim easily enough leveled at this woman. The woman did not look like monsters did in fairy tales, with slobbering maws and sharpened claws, but her red eyes made Meike's blood run cold regardless. She was no ordinary woman, but perhaps that was to be expected. Nothing about the night's events had been ordinary. "Oh, a monster am I?" The woman's unnatural eyes narrowed, and with a smile said, "You cut me to the quick, you humans do. At least you would, were I not accustomed to it. Perhaps I bring it upon myself, given the unnatural manner in which I treat my guests, but you could at least try to be polite. Why, if it were not for me, you both would be lying in the woods right now, mangled beyond all recognition." "So you really were the one who saved us. I thought as much. Yours isn't a face anybody would forget in a hurry." "Why, thank you. I will take that as a compliment. I am very striking, I know." "Why did you save us, though, and how?" "I can't believe you brought us back here, wherever here is, on your own. You must have had help." "Oh, if only, but alas, I've not had any help for, well, let's see, must have been a century at least." "A century?" Hetty gawked at the woman, her eyes agog. "That would make you older than my grandmother. That can't be right. You don't look a day over 18. "Oh, do you really think so? You're too kind." Laughing softly, the woman extricated a key from her pocket and inserted it into the waiting keyhole. Deftly, she turned it and deftly stepped inside the cell, the hem of her dark cape dragging against the uneven stone floor. Once inside the cell, she turned to pull the door open and locked it anew. "There, that ought to do it. It would be horribly tedious if you tried to run from me. I would be able to catch you, of course, but I'd rather not bother with all the fuss. It is such a hassle." With the door thusly secured, placed the key inside her pocket, she turned to look at her prisoners. For that, Meike knew, with a sinking feeling, was that she was. Meike had been aware of her status upon waking in her dank prison cell, but her presence of the woman, however aloof she was, made it abundantly clear. She had not been brought back to this woman's abode as an equal. She was at the woman's mercy. Von Essen and Meike feared her family's prestigious title would have little sway here. The woman did not seem like one who cared for such things. She did not seem like one who cared for much of anything, really, or even about anything. Her lips might have curved into a coy smile, like one that had been dealt a particularly good hand in a card game, but her red eyes were hard and horribly empty. Meike could tell on an instinctual level that this woman was not one to be trifled with. Why, she might not have been a woman at all. "Now, why are you looking at me like that?" The woman, catching Meike's cowed expression, pouted. "You're making me feel quite unwelcome." "I thought you would be relieved to see my face after being left to languish in the catacombs of my castle for hours on end, but maybe I was hoping for too much. In any case, you shouldn't frown like that, dear. It's an awful waste. You'll wrinkle your pretty face." This chastisement was familiar to Meike. She had heard it many times from her mother, while Meike had been trained to obey her mother without question. However, it was not so with this strange woman. Some of her reticence fell away, and Meike said, "What I do with my face is my own concern. I'm sure it's none of your business." My. The mysterious woman tittered. "You're fussier than you look. I took you for a shrinking violet, but maybe I was mistaken. You might make for a quite amusing plaything, though it would be a good sight prettier if you smiled. I can't say that I blame you for being so surly, though. I never liked smiling on command either, though it's been many, many years since anyone last tried to give me orders. It's fortunate nobody can tell me what to do now, at least. It came at quite a price, but... Oh well, never mind. Where are my manners? My name's Magdalena, but you may call me Lena. My family's name, meanwhile, is of no particular importance. It might have commanded some respect back in the day, but it is not so now. They have long since been obliterated, and I doubt history will remember them, and it would not wish to be. I am all that is left of their legacy, a fact that I would very much love to rub in their faces, but alas, I've never got the chance. It's very nice to meet you for the second time this night." So saying, Magdalena dropped a neat curtsy, holding her cape in lieu of a skirt. "But I'm afraid I will afford I'm afraid I will not be afforded much of a chance to properly know you. While I would relish in the chance to speak with a couple young maidens such as yourselves, I have designs for you beyond idle chatter." "And what do you mean by that exactly?" "Only that now I have brought you here, I cannot continue to let you live. I've already seen too much." "What?" Henny stared at Magdalena with wide eyes full of fear, and the air swelled with it. "What do you mean?" "What I said. Do try to keep up. It's awfully tedious having to explain myself down to the finer details." "But I suppose you have the right to know the bare minimum, prisoners as you may be. I would hate to keep you in suspense. At this point, it matters not how much you know. You will not be able to tell anybody else what you might learn here. You will not be venturing forth beyond these walls of the castle ever again." Magdalena smiled, her lips full with a wicked grin, not so very unlike that of the Joker in Henny's pack of cards. Though Magdalena's face was white, her lips were red, with very much like her eyes. They stood out in her milky face like a rose blooming despite the winter's chill. Or else Magdalena thought with a shudder, freshly spilt blood. "You must understand that I am not a normal woman. No human can hope to best me when it comes to a competition of sheer strength, as the bandits who were pursuing you soon discovered. It did not take me more than a few seconds to dispatch them. The fight they put up was so pathetic, it makes me wonder why they even bothered. If they'd any respect for my time, they would have slit their own throats in their daggers and saved me the trouble. You women's can be awfully thoughtless." "But if they had done that, I wouldn't have been able to bring their leader of the little group back to my castle. He was in a bad way, and I obliged to introduce myself to him before bestowing upon you similar honors. I really must apologize for making you wait." Magdalena dropped another curtsy. An elegant lady as an elegant lady might, but it smacked of insincerity. There were no respect in Magdalena's red irises for her pair prisoners. Rather than sympathize with their plight, she instead seemed more than amused. How many men and women had Magdalena brought to her castle, and how many had she summarily tortured? Make knew of at least one beside herself and Henny. The bandits' leader? Did you kill him? Eventually, yes. It was quite the sight. You ought to have seen the way he begged and pleaded and groveled at my feet. A grown man like that, who was practically made of muscle. Oh, how fickle fortune is. Just 1 hour hence, he was the predator stalking his prey through the woods, alongside his lackeys, and the next. Magdalena drew her hand across her neck in the unevocable, universal gesture of a slit throat. Well, what goes around comes around. He got what he deserved, and his screams really were exquisite. Did you, perchance, happen to hear them? It was being rather loud. Henny gave a violent start at this, but said nothing sensible. Her mouth fell open, but only syllables came out, all broken and interspaced. What? Oh goodness! Surprised as you are. Surprised, are you? You shouldn't be. That man was a bandit, a vulture in man's flesh who profited on misery. If it weren't for me, you would have been gone the same way as that poor unfortunates in that stalled carriage, with the driver and the horses too. Nobody was spared their ravages, man or beast. They made quite a grisly mess, whereas a century younger I would have thought it enough to turn even my stomach. Maybe that is so, but to gloat over another's death like that, it doesn't seem right. You're twisted. If I am twisted, that is only because of this world. Magdalena began, but then paused. Momentary furrow captured her white, smooth brow, but soon it straightened out as though nothing of note had occurred. Well, never mind that. I do not wish to spout cliches about good and evil. It would begin to bore myself. The fact of the matter is that the man got what he deserved, as did his compatriots. I took great pains to ensure that. I paid that brigand back twofold for what he did to you. Did you know that he tried to be stoic in the beginning? Humans often are, human males in particular. I have so much pride. It's funny, really. A cur like that wouldn't care so much about the appearances. He was less of a man than he was a dog. But then perhaps his pretensions of greatness or of grandeur. I soon stripped him of these lofty delusions, however. Humans are very alike in one regard, at least. You all scream the same after your bones have been broken, and you all bleed red. That man was a brigand, I'll admit, who deserved the hangman's noose, but that's for the court of law to decide, not you. What you did isn't justice, it's barbaric. You shouldn't be taking pleasure in other people's deaths. What gave you the right to kill him anyways? I had every right to kill him. He was trespassing upon my land, as were you and the young lady here. His life was already forfeit the moment he encroached upon my territory. The Lord's Prayer may say that we ought to forgive those who wrong us, but I've no patience for such teachings. They do not apply to me. The Lord has forsaken me. I am no longer a member of his congregation. We should have no love for him. He would have no love for me as I am now, and I have little love for him. I cannot conceive how he would have let me suffer so, if he truly existed. Sometimes I do wonder. So, you mean to add blasphemy to your list of crimes? Oh, I've done far, far worse than that in my time. The morals of you good, sensuous churchgoers do not apply to me. I'm not your kind. I am a drinker of blood who walks the night. I have been alive for over a century, though my life is very different from yours and your mistress's. I doubt that you could understand me. Neither do I want you to. I have no desire to understand you either. There would be no point. We're much too different. A drinker of blood. That would make you a vampire. It was Meke who offered forth this label, and after Henny's voice faltered. Meke was an ardent devourer of books, and she had read before such shadowy denizens of the night, much to her mother's chagrin. Need more hydration. I'm getting dry real fast. I'm reading all this. Lady Von Essen had thought that Meke was a well-bred young woman, not to read at all. Not to read at all. It will only excite your mind, dear, but should instead be busy with herself with embroidery. Is a lot of narration. Meke, however, always preferred books to busy work, particularly to work which involved needles. She found herself returning to stories time and time again, whenever she needed a break from her own dreary life. Meke had read all manner of books over the years, but she preferred adventure stories full of mystery, intrigue, and yes, even murder. Meke knew from her reading that vampires were nocturnal creatures, often aristocratic, who shunned the sunlight, dwelt in ruinous castles, and supped upon the lifeblood of fair maidens. Yes, Meke thought, in an oddly detached manner that did make sense. She had sensed something strange about Magdalena when first their eyes met. Meke's blue, Magdalena's shocking scarlet. Magdalena really must have been a vampire. It all makes sense, at least it would have, but had Meke been the heroine of one of her novels. But life, Meke reminded herself, was not akin to a story. Meke might have been consumed by books like a starving man, but she had sense enough to know when the words written within the pages of adventure stories were all cycles of fiction. Vampires ought to have remained within the realm of make-believe. They had no business walking about as humans did, made of cold, unfeeling flesh, with hearts which no longer beat. They were supposed to be constructs, mere figments of fancy. But Magdalena was real, undoubtedly so. Unless, Meke thought, striking her head had addled her. An unsettling thought. And unsettling though she was, Meke did not take her for a liar. Her confession had sounded quite sincere. Yes, that is correct. I am a vampire, and this castle is my territory. That and the woods that surround you. wandered into my domain, you little hopeless lambs, while on the run from those awful bandits. I know none of this is your fault. I have no quibbles with you. I'm not blaming you for what occurred tonight there. See how fair I am? I'm too nice by half. Too nice for my own good cause. You have been awfully surly with me, the both of you, but I've only ever been polite. I would even let you go if I could. Dispatching the brigands is one thing, but I take no pleasure in harming young ladies. But I fear that would be foolhardy. I cannot allow any who have wandered into my realm to leave here alive. I do not want you telling tall tales. I should snap both your necks and be done with it, but... Magdalena's red eyes found Meike's and held them. Her smile, which hitherto seemed so easy, faded once more, and her brows furrowed. You don't seem to be a mere peasant. Magdalena delivered her judgment softly, but something dark seemed to throb beneath her words, something sinister. I can tell from your clothes, sturdied as they are, that you are from a wealthy background. Your voice and your bearing. Yes, even the way you look at me. It all suggests that you are, in fact, a lady. Would I be correct in this assessment? Why do you ask? It would be problematic for me if I were to dispatch a woman of renown. I would not want your disappearance to catch the attention of men in high places. If they were to send out a search party into these woods, it is not wholly impossible that they would stumble upon my home. I have lived out of sight from the eye nigh on for a century, and I've no desire to invite half of Augsburg's constabulary into my home. The idea is incredibly unpleasant. Magdalena pulled a face as a small child might when confronted with a plate of food they did not much care for. If you really are a lady, then I might as well exercise some caution. I suppose I can always spare your life and only kill the dowdy common girl, your maid, I take it. Magdalena looked to Henny, now her lips curled into a mean smile. What do you say to that? It's not a bad trade, is it? Her life for yours? Precious few people who find themselves in my abode are ever able to live to tell the tale. You would be one in... Goodness, how many guests have I had over the years? There must have been a good 200 or 300. Aren't you touched by my thoughtfulness? Silence descended in the decrepit cell following Magdalena's announcement. Stuck for words, Meike could only stare at her lips parted. What was she to say to Magdalena's proposal? How was she to feel? There was only relief, certainly, that the prospect of escaping the cell, but Meike took no pleasure in it, not when it would come at the cost of Henny's life. How could she abandon her friend who had been by her side since early childhood? Were it not for Henny, Meike would be dead already, butchered like a farmyard animal in her parents' carriage. Henny had rescued her once already from a bandit's blade. It seemed unconscionable that she would leave her now. Meike turned this over in her mind, worrying her teeth with her lower lip when... Well, if it's my life you're after... Henny reached out, taking Meike's hands between her own and said, "What else is there to think about? It sounds like a fine suggestion to me, don't you agree, Meike?" "What?" Meike stared. The Henny's soft face and her eyes vast and incomprehensible. "Surely you don't mean that. You're not all right with this, are you, Henny?" "Well, it'd be a lie if I said I was jumping up and down for joy at the prospect of being eaten by a vampire." Henny's smile wavered, though she maintained a brave face. "But if it's what I've got to do to save your life, Meike, then I'll do it. I do love you, after all. I'm not going to let you get hurt." Henny tried to sound brave, but Meike could hear how her voice trembled, and all the same could feel too how Henny's hands shook. Ugh. Henny, like her, had heard the screams of the bandits' leader as they echoed through the halls. Though neither woman had seen his final moments, they knew from his cries that his demise must have been barbarous. Meike could not allow Henny to endure such suffering for her sake. She could not allow her to die. Meike knew Henny only wished the best for her, but... "No." Meike spoke up, her voice surprisingly cool, given the wild fluctuations of her heart within her breast. "I won't allow that to happen. It wouldn't be right. If one of us must remain here, then it ought to be me." "What? No, you can't mean this, Meike. Surely you jest." "No, I'm not. You know, I've a terrible sense of humor, Henny. I hardly ever tell jokes. I don't even have enough levity in me for them. I'm being very serious. You've always looked out for me ever since I was small. Not that I always listened to you. Don't you remember when I stole the keys to the mausoleum and my insufferable curiosity crept inside? But of course I remember. You dragged me in after you despite my warnings, and it went about as badly as I expected to. And didn't it just? Faintly Meike smiled through the dire situation, was happy to share this memory, though it wasn't all fond with Henny. For all she knew, it might have well been her last chance to reminisce with her maid like this. Meike knew not what future held, but Lady Von Essen was in such an awful mood when she found out. It was quite frightening, and I'd never seen anything like it. Oh yes, she was fearfully cross. It was a wonder she'd fire didn't come out of her nostrils. I recall that she struck you, and then when I tried to argue on her behalf, she struck me too. She struck me so hard my ears are still ringing from it sometimes. God, yes, poor Hen. I felt awful about it the time, really I did. I didn't care about my punishment. Gods know I deserved it. But you'd done nothing wrong. You were perfectly reasonable about the whole thing. If I'd listened to you, I would have been avoided that fur altogether. But I was too reckless. I ignored your wishes, but you still tried to protect me. You jumped to my defense, just like a knight, and you were slapped silly for your troubles. It was horribly unfair. I've dragged you into all sorts of messes before, Henny, and you've always come to my defense. But you've been a wonderful friend to me throughout the years. I can't keep relying on you. I don't want to take advantage of your kindness. But Meike, I like it when you rely on me. Please feel free to take advantage. That's what I'm here for. No, I can't. This isn't right. It's long past time that I repaid you. By offering yourself up for sacrifice in my stead. That isn't what I want. Meike, please. Henny stared at her mistress with an expression entreating. I love you, but you're acting like a crazy woman. You're the pinnacle of rationality, are you? Considering this crazy deal that is truly insane. Don't tell me you've accepted this. Of course I've not accepted it. I'm terrified, really. See how my poor hands are shaking? But one of us is biting it. It to be better than the both of us. If I can protect you, then I must. I will. That's my job. No, it isn't. Not any longer. I'm absolving you of your duty, Henny. This farce has lasted long enough. What farce? You know what I mean? Magdalena. Yes? Magdalena looked between the two women with a coy smile playing about her lips. Have you quite finished your little quarrel? I must confess I was beginning to feel rather left out. My apologies. I will endeavor to not be so rude to you in the future. To my hostess. Meike dipped her head in a gesture of esteem, not one dissimilar to the way Henry was bidden to bob around her mother. Meike knew she could not afford to anger Magdalena. If Meike was to save Henny, she would be obliged to beg and bow and scrape. Fortunately, begging and bowing were not beyond Meike's means. Even though she was a lady, she was no stranger to scraping either. Having tearfully entreated her parents to reconsider her marriage prospects. She had failed on that score, but she did not intend to fail now. She knew what she must say. It seemed like a stretch that Magdalena would believe her, but if she did... I feel you are laboring under misapprehension, Lady Magdalena. Your reasoning is sound. There would indeed be a ruckus if a noble woman was to go missing, but your application is not. I am not a lady, you see, but my companion is. Oh? Magdalena raised an eyebrow. And you mean to say you are the maid in this? This lump in the Henny here is mistress. Yes, that is correct, yes. I know I'm dressed as a lady, albeit a disgraced one, but that was part of Lord and Lady Von Essen's ruse. While traveling, they often have dressed me as a lady, while Henry, that is to say, Henrique, dresses as a maid. It is a means of subterfuge, so that if our carriage were attacked by bandits, I am the one who would be in the harm's way rather than my mistress. Only a truly desperate bandit would rummage through the pockets of a maid, especially when she's with her lady. What? Meike, that's... Henny began, but Meike cut her off. She was warming to her ruse, despite the chill which infused the air, and she found she could not still her tongue, not until she had delivered her whole address. Lady Henrique is the one who will be missed in Augsburg, and not I. She has a fiancé waiting for her, you know. He is a very important man. If she does not arrive before the dawning of the next day, he will certainly send out a search party for her. You would not want that, would you? Magdalena pondered Meike's tall tale a few moments, gloved hand resting upon her hip. As she thought, Meike stared at her, compelling her through sheer force of will to accept her her tale at face value. It is partly unbelievable. Meike knew, but she needed not convince the whole jury. She needed only convince Magdalena. An age seemed to pass, during which nobody spoke until... Oh, very well. If that's how it is, then I suppose I have no choice. You may leave my abode, Lady Henrique. Here, Magdalena dropped another effusive curtsy. If that is indeed your real name. I will grant you a chance to reunite with your fiancé in Augsburg, who must be awaiting you with no shortage of anticipation. Who wouldn't, after all, wish to dote upon a maiden as fair as yourself? Your surprisingly well-spoken maid, however, will be bidden to remain by my side. Do we have a deal? Yes. I would do anything to ensure Lady Henrique's safety. Oh, most assuredly, you would not consent to acting as a decoy on her behalf if you didn't care. What a wonderful friendship you women have. It's quite special, really, particularly given the disparity in your social statuses. Now come along, Lady Henrique. It was very lovely to make your acquaintance, but now I fear I must cut our meeting short. Let me escort you to the front door. It's the least I can do for a woman of your lofty status. What? Make it no? Henny cried, but in vain. Magdalena was soon upon her, her pale fingers winding tight around her wrist. Meike, please stop this. Tell her the truth. I'm sorry, Hen, but... Abashed, Meike dropped her gaze to the stone floor. Though she had given her life for Henny's sake, she found she could not meet her friend's gaze as she was dragged bodily from the prison cell they both inhabited. The hurt in Henny's countenance, the betrayal, stung far too much. This is how it has to be. Says who? I was willing to go along with this woman's plans, but you scuppered it up. I don't understand you at all, Meike. Why would you tell such tissue of lies for little old me? Magdalena, please. Henny stared at Magdalena while trying and failing to dig her heels into the stone floor of her cell. Surely you can't believe my mistress. It's obvious she's lying. There's no way she isn't a lady, not with her fancy and proper way of talking. She's far more genteel than I could ever dream of being. Her manners are certainly more polished than your own, yes, but perhaps this comes from years of servitude. You could stand to learn a thing or two from your maid, Lady Henrique. Your fiancé won't think much of you now, I'm afraid. Why are you speaking almost like you fishwife? Now come along, let us not argue. You will give me a headache. But Meike, I can't leave her. Let me go! Henny cried anew, squirming now but Magdalena's hold upon her didn't loosen. If anything, in fact, it seemed to grow stronger to such a degree that Henny screamed. "No!" Henny's cries echoed through the cell, more unbearable than those of the bandit leader during his final moments. Magdalena had not made Henny bleed, at least, but she was gripping her wrist so tightly, Make feared she might snap it. Magdalena had strength enough, so Make had been led to believe, to best even fully grown men. Henny, who was short, dumpy, and could put up a little way in a fight, the poor maid was quite helpless before her. There was nothing which could be done, not any longer. Henny would have to leave, while Make would remain incarcerated in this jury cell alone. This was what Make had wanted, and she had spun her, frankly, untenable story. So why then did she feel so guilty? "Let go of me! Let go of me, I say! Make, please!" Henny continued to protest, but Magdalena remained insensible to her cries. The door of the cell was closed anew with a metallic thud, and Make was left sitting upon the ground as she had been 1 hour hence, when she had woken, pale-faced, trembling, and all alone. Time passed at an agonizingly slow pace as Make sat on the stone floor of her cell, with her legs demurely crossed. Without Henny to cheer her, the air felt colder than it had before, the shadows darker. Magdalena had taken Henny from the cell so abruptly that she had not been afforded the chance to collect her scattered playing cards. Now these cards were strewn upon the floor, upturned red diamonds as red as Magdalena's eyes, and coal black clubs. Make caught the eyes of the nearby joker, lips pulled into a garish smile, and shivered. Paranoid though she knew it was, it felt as though the card was mocking her. Make reached out, fingers trembling, to grab the card, then flipped it over. She did not want to look at the Joker's grinning face. She did not want to think either about what Henny was doing or how she was feeling, and certainly did not want to think of her own future. One second, I need eye drops. My vision is doubling at the moment. Usually that helps. Let me see if I can find them. There we go. I'm having a hard time reading at the moment. Oh, it fucking stings. I'm drier than beef jerky, I swear. It's better, but I need to let them finish distributing. Hydration check. A little better, but I'm still getting double vision, so might not do too much longer. It would be easier to drive such musings from her mind, and yet, though Meike tried to keep her thoughts placid, like smooth surface of an untroubled lake, sinister queries, sharp-toothed like eels, writhe just beneath the surface. What would happen when Magdalena returned? Did she mean to kill Meike quickly, or would she make her suffer first? Magdalena had seemed to derive great pleasure from her torture of the bandit leader, but she had said she did not care to harm young ladies. But she meant it. Meike could only hope if Magdalena did mean to kill her, she would do so quickly. She had suffered enough for one night. No, for one lifetime. Meike, despite her heroism, did not want to die, though the thought terrified her. Then she imagined how Magdalena might kill her. A blade to the throat, perhaps? Poison, drowning, strangulation. She felt her skin icy cold, now rippled with goose flesh. She did not want to be stabbed, or poisoned, or drowned, or choked. She wanted to live. Meike had read stories of knights and their exploits, but she was no chivalrous sir herself. She was a young woman, though not, as her mother might have reminded her, so very young anymore. She had little experience of the world beyond her parents' home. From an early age, Meike had been taught to hold her tongue, to hold her thoughts, to be sweet and pretty and patient, above all else, pliant. She was not supposed to think for herself, let alone stand up for herself. It wasn't appropriate conduct for a lady. Meike had endured 25 years as such, living only to please her parents and her parents' esteemed visitors, and later her parents' chosen fiancé, but it had not felt like living. The only times Meike had felt as though The only times Meike felt herself were those when she played cards with Henny, read her books, or sat upon her window at night and stared out into the garden. Meike was 25, almost 26, but she knew nothing of the world. She knew nothing of freedom. She had never truly lived. How then was she supposed to die? She could not pass on, surely, until she had at least been afforded the chance to visit some of the places she had read about in her stories. Such dreams had been all which she had kept Meike going through her dreary days and kept indoors. She had preserved, not for the sake of her present, which she had lamented, but hopes of a better future which waited, she had always been sure, beyond the horizon. Now, Meike feared she would never be able to reach the future. Her life was to be curtailed before it would truly begin. She would never see any good world now. Paris or Venice and Rome would remain a mystery to her, exotic settings for stories and nothing more. She had been born and trapped. She would die thus. The only difference was to no longer her parents entrapping her, but a monster. It was a pitiful way to bring her life to its denouement. Had her 25 years thus far been a story? Meike thought bitterly. It would have been a hopelessly dull one, full of endless waiting, but precarious little doing. Waiting to live. Waiting to die. Was there any difference between the two states, really? When all was said and done? There's no point in crying about it. Meike muttered under her breath in the dark for her own peace of mind. There's no guarantee I would have been allowed to live even if Magdalena did set me free. I would have returned to Herr Gerhardt and would be wed, and then I would spend the rest of my days trapped in his house. I would go from being a cloistered daughter to a accosted wife. Is that any better, really? It would be, Meike mused, nothing but another form of imprisonment. Walter had the money to travel anywhere, but whether he would be willing to expend these funds on little jaunts for his housebound bored wife was doubtful. It was better this way. Meike had no life, she knew, waiting for her beyond the walls of Magdalena's castle. She had never been allowed to live as she wanted. That being the case, she may as well die. She had nothing left to lose. There was no sense in being sad, not really, but... Meike wiped her eyes with the back of her right arm and felt an alarming dampness against her skin. She had not expected that, but perhaps she ought to. Her heart felt like it was breaking. Why am I crying? Meike brought her knees to beneath her chin once more, drawing her arms around her legs, tried to curb her tears. Minutes continued to pass by, more intolerable than the other which had preceded it, until the last. Meike was alerted to the sound of footsteps. The iron door, which partitioned the cell from the hall, opened with a scraping squeal, and once more Magdalena entered Meike's cell. Though Magdalena had left with an unwilling Henny in tow, she was now alone. Henny was gone. Well, well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes? How fares you, my dear captive? I do apologize for the wait. Oh, never mind about me. What about Henny? Did you set her free? Goodness me, your loyalty towards your lady is most profound. I was certain you would be inquiring as to your own fate, but no, you seem to only care for her. You really ought to worry about yourself more, given the circumstances. But I shall endeavor to allay your worries. I did indeed set your mistress free. I escorted her to the entrance of my home, then bid her on her merry way. Now, why do you ask? Do you not trust me? You've done little to deserve it, given the way you've treated Henny and I, but though... I'm glad to hear it. I only hope that Henny will be alright on her own. That remains to be seen. I set her free, yes, but there's no guarantee she'll be able to find her way to Augsburg, not in the dark with all this fog. These woods are dense, and the paths are not clearly signposted. It would come as to no surprise if she were to find herself lost, or else at the mercy of wild animals. This forest is teeming with wolves. Did you know that? Wolves? Oh yes, this forest is just as much their territory as it is mine. They often come out at night to hunt. Bandits aren't the only thing fair ladies have to watch out for. But if your lady friend is resourceful and luck is on her side, she should emerge from this trial unscathed. Let us hope that she'll be all right, shall we? Meike said nothing to this, but instead dropped her gaze, her irises fixed upon her knees. Her mind turned not to her own indeterminate fate, but to Henny, who would now be staggering through the woods wreathed in ephemeral fog. How far away was Osper? Meike did not know. She had lost all sense, not only of time, but of space. The world seemed to have shrunk until it encompassed naught but her and herself. Being imprisoned in Magdalena's abode would spell certain death, as it had for the leader of the bandits, but Henny was not out of the woods yet, literally and metaphorically speaking. She would still meet with disaster during her escape. She could still meet with disaster during her escape attempt. Meike saw Henny backed against a copse of trees, their branches slender, sinister, and a pack of hungry wolves bore down upon her, their eyes glistening madly in the moonlight. This was only one possibility. Magdalena had said Henny would need luck on her side, and Henny had that in abundance, if her performance in Joker was anything to be believed. She had always been better at cards than Meike. Now, enough about Lady Henrique. She's no longer my captive, and such is of little interest to me. I would far rather speak to you. To me. Yes, indeed. I've designs for you, my loyal little servant girl. I do hope you'll make yourself useful during your stay. Designs? And you mean... Meike pressed her fingers at the base of her throat, and she could feel her pulse beating beneath the surface of her cool skin, erratic as a rabbit's caught in a snare. Do you wish to drain me of my blood? Do you want me to drain you of your blood? Magdalena tittered. How very eager you are. It is not that. Do not misunderstand. I wish only, if you mean to kill me, that you would do so quickly. I've grown sick of waiting. Oh yes, that look in your eyes is delectable. It may be even more so, even than your blood. You're so very defiant, but what is this I spy? You appear to be shaking, my poor little Meike. That's because it's cold. And not because of your fright. I was able to protect my dear friend. I've nothing to be afraid of now. Then you care nothing for your own life? I've never been afforded a life. I may take it if you wish. You wouldn't be the only one. Ah, yes, that is the fate, or so I've heard, being a servant. You poor dear. Magdalena's red eyes softened. The moment Meike wondered whether she could see a trace of sympathy upon her captor's fair face. It lasted only a second, however, before it faded, replaced instead with a wry smile. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I cannot comply with your request. For the moment, that is. I will drain you of your blood in due course, but I've no desire to do so now. The bandits I encountered earlier are far more than a satisfactory meal, so I am glutted. I do not think I could drink another drop of blood. Did you mean to draw this farce out longer still? I'll draw it out as long as I wish, until I'm sufficiently thirsty. There seems little sense in overindulging. Your blood would taste sweeter, I'm sure, than a bandit's, but that only makes it more imperative that I save you until I truly want you. Though it was Meike's death Magdalena spoke of, there seemed something sultry, seductive even, in the way she stressed her words. Meike, who was unused to being wanted, found the blood pooling beneath her cheeks, despite the chill which clung to her. How she could feel it, she wondered when Magdalena brought her lips to her neck. Would it hurt? She supposed she would feel a pricking sensation as Magdalena's teeth sink into her flesh, and then... Now, won't you come with me? You'll catch your death of cold, staying inside this dreary cell, and you'll be of no use to anybody. If I'm to enjoy you properly, I would prefer to do so while your body is still warm. What? Meike looked at Magdalena, her blue eyes uncomprehending. Are you really letting me go? In a manner of speaking, yes. Though I'll only be transporting you from one prison to another. As your hostess, I don't believe these quarters are wholly appropriate for a long-term stay, especially not for a fair maiden such as yourself. You will be in my abode for several days yet, I fear, until I further need of you. Until then, I would like you to live in some measure of comfort. How? Unexpected. I didn't know that you were so gracious. I can be. I've hidden depths, you see, much like that of the forest that surrounds my humble abode. I do so hate to see you shiver so, and your skin is so pale, poor dear. You and I could almost be sisters. White skin may be fitting for us vampires, but it isn't so for maidens, not even of the fairest in all the land. Now, please follow me. I doubt you've any real wish to stay here, languishing, unless you mean to make further martyr of yourself. No, Meike bit her lower lip. She was loath to accept kindness from Magdalena, but she didn't raise a fair point. It was cold in her cell and miserable alongside it. She remained there overnight. It did not seem impossible that the blood in her veins really might freeze. Meike had already given up on her own life, but she did not want to die as a stray dog racked with shivers. If that is what you want from me, I've no reason to refuse. How very biddable of you. The words which come from your mouth may be stubborn, but it seems your experience when it comes to following orders. Of course I do. I'm the maid, like I said. Ah, yes, so you did. That would explain your servility. Part of me was hoping you might refuse so that I was bidden to carry you. Ooh? But this is fine too. It spares me the effort. Shall we? Please lead the way. Meike, you're missing out on opportunities! Meike dropped a Magdalena curtsy, this time taking her dirtied skirts between her fingers, pads of which had turned pink from the cold. Oh no, the cough is starting. Ugh. Magdalena smiled at this display. For a prisoner, you're awfully cheeky. Then turned upon her heel after bidding Meike to follow. Naturally, Meike obeyed. She could see she had little choice in the matter. Magdalena led Meike down the twisting hallway, packed full of cells identical to this one. Identical to the one Meike and Henny had been imprisoned in. Meike tried not to peer into the cells as she passed them, but curiosity soon overcame her, and she found her head swiveling. She feared as she stared through the darkness that she might encounter sights more horrific than she was capable of comprehending. Rusted torture instruments, perhaps, or dead bodies. But it was so very dark. Fuck. Oh no, something's wrong with my charging cord. 1 second. I have to do all the troubleshooting for it. I might have knocked it when I was dealing with the dog earlier. Function. God, the thing's so hot. Fuck. Something's up with my charging port, I think. Okay, it says it's charging now. I'm gonna leave it on the desk this time. Reposition my blankets so it doesn't accidentally cover up my doodad. Anyway. What was that Steam achievement? I don't know. I missed it. I was too busy worrying about my thing. But it was very dark in the bowels of Magdalena's home. Meike could scarce make out anything. Not even the moonlight, which spilled intermittently through the barred window, would fully illuminate the sprawling prison complex. This, Meike supposed, tearing her eyes away from one of the cells as it passed, was probably a good thing. She had witnessed enough horrors for one night. Magdalena eventually brought Meike to the foot of the staircase, which led her from the subterranean cells. Careful, Magdalena cautioned Meike as they began their ascent. These steps are steep and slippery too. If you fall, you may break your neck. Meike had been less nervous, might she have laughed to hear her jailer fuss over her so. A broken neck did not seem like a very cruel fate when compared to Magdalena's designs upon her. Perhaps it would be quicker to die thus rather than having her blood drained. At the very least, it would be swifter demise than freezing in her prison cell. Neko felt little in the way of humor, however. She took the chill banister beneath her right hand. She began to climb. She could recognize the irony in Magdalena's warmth, only vaguely. Her mouth fell home to a permanent line, and as though carved from stone, her brow furrowed. It seemed unlikely she would ever smile again. The chill of the basement had faded as Meike cleared the final step of the twisting staircase to emerge in a spacious hallway which with arched windows and candles flickering upon the stone walls and sconces. The hallway was not so very dissimilar in decor to her parents' home, though it was less ornate, the furnishings worn down by old age. It was apparent Magdalena's home had once been noble, but it had clearly fallen to rot and ruin in its heyday long since past. The air and the ground smelt almost as rank as the dungeon, and every conceivable surface was heaped with inches of dust. There was so much dust, in fact, that Meike could feel it in the air when she inhaled. The dust irritated her eyes, and the nose laid heavily, unpleasantly on her tongue. Meike swallowed, hoping to void her mouth of the taste of decay, but in vain. The dust was so thick she sneezed, which prompted Magdalena to say with a wryly amused smile, "Bless you." "Thank you," Meike replied, abashed, and then, "I thought you did not care for God or his teaching." "I don't, but I presume that you do. I thought you might appreciate it." "I see. I'm very thoughtful of you." "I know, for a vampire, I'm unusually sensitive." Really, Meike thought she had canvassed the disused, dusty hallway. She would be more appreciative if Magdalena would let her go. That did not seem to be high on Magdalena's list of priorities. Perhaps it would be for the best if she let go of such unfounded optimism that would lead only to disappointment, and Meike had to force herself on more than her fair share of that already. Mute with fatigue, Meike followed Magdalena to the end of the hall, where the wooden door was inlaid. Magdalena seized the brass handle and twisted it, pushed it ajar. It struck for a few moments, as though unwilling to move, but soon shifted, creaking as it did so. When the door swung back, it was to reveal a vast, spacious room with a ceiling so cavernous Meike had craned her neck to see it. A large, ornate staircase was set in the center of the room, though it felt like a chamber which rose from the floor, and the banisters carved with the fronds of ivy and bunches of grapes. This, Meike supposed, must have been the entrance hall. It had clearly been designed to impress it, for its vastness was almost dizzying. Magdalena's home. Could it really be a castle? Or even larger than Meike's, and vast enough to be unnerving? Trapped within the scene of spoiled luxury, Meike felt smaller than ever before, a wooden doll rather than a grown woman rattling around in a playhouse. The entrance hall bore with a wine-red carpet and stone walls, but it showed clear signs of deterioration. The The dust was so profuse that it made Meike's eyes water, and several of the stone steps which led upward towards were cracked and chipped. A grand piano could be found in the corner of the room, but its lid was shut, and Meike doubted it had played, if it still could be played in decades. There was a chandelier in the entrance hall, hanging aloft from high ceiling, but when Meike craned her neck upwards, she could see in the dark that it was festooned with spider webs. This house might have been grand once, but not so now. It seemed a wonder, really, that it still stood when clearly it was uncared for. Your servants don't seem to be working very hard. Meike spoke lightly, swallowed by empty air. Perhaps you ought to see you hiring new staff. My mistress would never permit. Meike brought her hand to the banister, the grand staircase, and drew it back, wincing. The pads of her thumb and index finger were fuzzy with dust. This. Oh? Magdalena, who had already begun to ascend the stairs, turned and looked at Meike, who smiled. Are you judging my home, Meike? I would never presume to be so rude. I just thought it might feel more homey, that's all. If it were less of a pile. Magdalena had laughed when she shook her head. You are quite right, of course, to judge. Please judge away to your heart's content. I've never been much of a fan of this place, really. Its scale is too grandiose for even my liking. My great-grandfather, it was he who built the castle. He had more money than sense, I'm afraid, and absolutely no taste to back it up. The house has no need to be this large. But there was land enough for it and the money too. And when the man has land and money, the means, he will often think, well, why not? Practically matters little in the decision of great men, and neither, to my unending woe, does aesthetic sense. I can believe that. My own father, well, my master, rather. Meike's face flushed with this gap, tips of her ears turning pink. I've filled my own residence with pointless balls. They were all expensive, but no particular cohesive. The parlor looked like a museum once he was through with it, and hardly seemed like a place to sit and relax. I was too afraid to spend my measure of time in there in case I broke something. And it seems we have something at least in common. I found this place dismal even when my family was alive, and we have a legion of maids back then to keep everything spick and span. They kept the dust and the cobwebs at bay, bless their hearts, but they couldn't combat the loneliness. Now my family's dead, and all our maids along with them. I can hardly take on new hires, being what I am, so my home was rather left to go to ruin. I clean what I can, but there's so very much of this house to clean that and only one of me. It's quite an overwhelming challenge. My attempts to cleaning have, over at least half a century, fallen quite by the wayside. I hope you can forgive my slovenliness. Oh no, it's fine. I understand. You're too kind. Magdalena's red eyes softened, and as they had back in the dungeon, was somewhat akin to sympathy. But before Meike could ponder this, her jailer turned. Oh, listen to me, prattle on. It is most inconsiderate of me when you must be tired. Let us make haste to your room. We've not long to go now. Neko followed behind Magdalena as a puppy might, almost grateful for the promise of a room and a bed. It was as Magdalena said, she really did feel tired. She was more than ready to lie down beneath warm covers, or even lukewarm covers, and sleep. Anything would have been better than the stone floor where she had been lying. Mika yawned, her eyes blossoming with tears anew, while pressing her right hand. Her fingertips still flecked with dust instinctively to her mouth. Oh! Half asleep though she was, Mika's senses were alert enough to detect the sudden noise. There came through the yawning gulf of the entrance hall, a sound not dissimilar to that Mika had heard in the dungeon. It was a scream. Or was it? Mika was unsure. The scream, was fainter than the one that she had detected in the dungeon. It seemed not to emit from the ground under which the cells lay, but from above her head. There was another person concealed in Magdalena's abode, somebody other than herself. Was it another captive, kept separate from the rest? Was it Henny? Magdalena. Lena, please. Magdalena's quite a mouthful. I would rather use a nickname, as you did with your mistress. Neko wished to contest this, but her relationship with Magdalena was not half as close to allow the use of nicknames. But she was too tired to engage in an argument. What did it matter, really, how she addressed Magdalena, when soon she would be dead? Lena, then. What was that noise I just heard? What noise? You didn't hear it? Mike stared at Magdalena, her expression one of patent disbelief. It wasn't very loud, I'll grant you, but it was unmistakable. I swear it sounded like a scream. A scream? Magdalena pondered on one hand beneath her chin. Such sounds are not unheard of in my abode when I'm attending to a prisoner. Mike shivered. There's nobody in these walls now, save for me and you. Nobody living, at least. Then it's not the imprisoned bandit? Certainly not. He will never make a peep again. I made sure of that with my own two hands. It would be hard for him to speak with half of his throat torn out, you see. Oh. Mike pressed a hand to her own throat as if to check its integrity. As she did so, she choked. The air was so thick with dust it was hard to breathe. Now, dear, worry not. It was not your mistress who screamed thus, if that was what you're wondering. I'm a woman of my word, and I promised I'd let her go. She's quite... well... she's not necessarily all right, but she's away from me and from my home. There is a possibility that she may live to see another dawn. And who screamed? What was that sound? It must have been your imagination. You overexerted yourself after this night's events. Anybody would be exhausted in your situation. It didn't feel like a dream, though. No. Magdalena shrugged in a manner which did not seem quite in keeping with her ladylike bearing. I suppose it must have been the wind, then. It is very draughty in here. Is that all? That is all it could be, unless you suggest that the dead can speak. Magdalena's red eyes bored to Meike's and intense. So intense, Meike feared they would consume her. Unsettled, Meike glanced away. She could not stare into those red eyes for too long without shivering. No, I wasn't suggesting that. Good. I know it is expected for women to lose their minds at the drop of a hat, but I've grown quite sick of being regarded as the weaker sex. I am pleased to see you doing your level. Best not to let us down. Why you haven't swooned even once, which is more than most men can say when I bring them here. It's really quite commendable. You might swoon, though, from the lack of sleep if we continue to tarry. Let us be off, or we will never make it to our destination. Meike nodded and followed along behind the hostess anew. She could no longer hear the scream, but its memory haunted her all the same. Meike had heard during the course of that night all kinds of cries born from human misery. She thought she knew enough now to distinguish which sounds of the howling wind. That cry she had heard, though briefly, had not sounded like the breeze, regardless of what Magdalena said. Meike was certain that the sound belonged to a person, but why would Magdalena lie about such a thing? It was impossible to say. God, they're both so pretty. Here we are, home sweet home. So... Magdalena looked at Meike, an amused, almost roguish smile playing upon her lips. What do you think? Meike examined the room mutely, her hands folded at her front. The chamber Magdalena had brought her to was dark, given the lateness of the hour, lit only by a pair of candles on either side of the bed. Meike could see, however, it was every bit as derelict as the rest of Magdalena's home, and even if she had been able to see, she would have smelled it. The air was fusty, and though it had been left to circulate inside the room for years on end, which it most likely had. Every surface, meanwhile, that Meike could make of in the flickering candlelight was covered in dust. The sheets upon the bed, though, were neatly made, were wholly with age and insects, as was the carpet on the floor. It was a sad room, really ignorant of human occupation for years, but it was still a superior set of lodgings to that which Meike had woken. At least this room had a bed, a four-poster one, no less. This likely like the one in Meike's home, with a mattress and sheets upon which Meike could rest her weary limbs. The bedchamber had a wardrobe too, though Meike possessed nothing to store in it, save the clothes upon her own back. There's a writing desk upon which laid a basin for washing and a chamber pot for more delicate business beneath. This pot was thankfully far cleaner than the one Meike had found in the dungeon, so quite spotless. She imagined it unused. The desk faced a large window, which was currently obscured by a set of dark blue curtains. Meike could not see beyond the window, though she doubted she would have afforded much of a view even if she had drawn the curtains back. It was late after all. It was not as cold in this room as it was in the underground cells, but it was not very warm either. The wind crept in through the fine cracks of the aged windows to toy with the reddish-orange flames of the two lit candles, to toy, too, with Meike's hair and the hem of her dress. She shivered. Do you not have a tongue in your head? Magdalena needled Meike, who had yet to speak. Don't tell me that you've come over all shy. I brought you to this room solely so that you might sleep. I have no wicked designs on your innocence, regardless of how pretty you are. I only want your blood, not your body.
We'll see about that.
I beg your pardon? Mickey blinked at Magdalena, uncomprehending. What designs are you speaking of?
Oh, you sweet innocent baby. You're so cute.
You cannot tell. I'm sure I've no idea. None whatsoever. Not at all. I'm wholly ignorant of such affairs. Goodness me. Magdalena rolled her red eyes upwards to the ceiling, seemed to sag beneath its own weight. I can't tell whether you're being dense on purpose or whether you really are that innocent. Did your mother never teach you what men and women do in chambers such as this? My mother did not, no. She thought such topics beneath her. That was my governess's job, although... Mickey frowned. I don't think I would care to do much of anything in a chamber like this one. It smells of the grave. Magdalena clicked her tongue. You're being rather rude about my home, you know. Here I am, trying to be a good hostess, and you throw my kindness back in my face. I know you do not like your home much either, you told me. Touché. I did try to pick out one of the more pleasanter rooms for you, but there are so many of them, it is difficult to keep abreast of them all. I rarely have visitors. When I do, they all get thrown into a dungeon. There seemed little point, therefore, in keeping these rooms spick and span. I hope you can forgive all the dust and general disuse.
Welcome back.
Oh, I've more to take issue than that. Yes, I suppose you do. You must be quite the bone to pick with me. Maybe I do. But not right now. I'm too tired. Yes, you do look it. Your face is frightfully pale. I think a good night's sleep is what the doctor ordered, provided you are able to rest, that is. That would be nice, but... Okay, let her fingers trail along the brocade covers of the bed, her expression pensive. What did you mean earlier when you said you have no designs on my innocence? Dear me, I thought perhaps you were joking. But I can see that you are in no fit state for it. Don't tell jokes, I've little to laugh about. And you've even yet less to laugh about now, you poor dear. Magdalena cleared her throat. I meant only to say that I would not do unto you as a man might, regardless of surroundings. No, I've no nefarious intentions, of that can be assured.
Yet.
Make a thought of her governess's explanation of sex and Walter's expectations come their wedding night and flushed. Sudden rush of blood beneath her cheeks enticed Magdalena in any way. She did not show it, though her fingers did twitch at the sight of constricting gloves. I do not understand, Meike said after a pause, feeling for all her reading quite ignorant and unholy.
Shame she did not find the smut books.
I know what men and women do behind closed doors, but how could two women set about something similar? It's not possible.
Oh, honey. You will learn one day.
You think so? I know so. My governess explained everything to me in great detail. When one wishes to make a baby, well, two women cannot do that. There would be no sense to it. And you think people ought to do things because they make sense. That is quite narrow-minded. But people are often uneducated in such affairs, both in my time and your own. In some ways, the world has changed a great deal, yet in others... Well, never mind. I can see I'm only confusing you. You're very innocent. It hurts. Perhaps it is to be expected, though. Ladies ought to not know such things. They are born to be bred and to be ignorant. What? Meike had not understood the full implications of Magdalena's previous lament, but she had understood well enough what she meant by this. Why would you call me that? I already told you, I'm not a lady. I am Lady Henrique's faithful servant. Yes, you did say. And that is true. She is the lady, not I. You did labor that point quite intensely. Yes, in the cells. You were so fervent about it. You almost had me fooled. At least you would have. If you weren't in such terrible actress. What? Oh, don't you what me. It's quite tiresome. Did you think I would not fail to notice all your fancy turns of phrase, your vocabularies, that of a well-young madam, not a maid, not even a lady's maid? You wear that sumptuous dress of yours easily, dirty though as it is, and your bearing is definitively regal. You could never hope to pass as a common servant girl, not in a month of Sundays. I'm not stupid. Then Meike sank down on the bed, which creaked beneath her as if warning. Her palms were pressed to the mattress to support her weight, which was all of a sudden felt excessive. Her heart was pounding like a drum. You knew from the beginning I was lying? Indeed I did. It was very obvious. I can tell you've no practice in deceit, Meike, my dear. You're too you are much too sweet for it. But if you knew I was lying, why did you agree to let Henny go? Herr Gerthardt wouldn't lift a finger to aid Henny if she disappeared, but he will suddenly come looking for me. Herr Gerthardt, is that the name of your fiancé? Yes, it is. And you do not refer to him by his Christian name. That is... I am... Dear me, you mustn't have been very close to the man if you addressed him in so distant manner. Why, you make him sound like a stranger. Do you truly wish to marry him? I hadn't any choice. My parents... Ah, yes, leave me to ask is how it always goes, isn't it? And what of your fiancé? Does he know you well enough to try and rescue you? I think he might. Meike swallowed, tasting dust on her tongue. He's an important businessman. He takes care over his investments, or so I've heard. I imagine it would be the same for me too. I'm von Essen, after all. There would be a lot of prestige in wedding me. So that is how he regards you, as a profitable purchase? I cannot say. After all, I hardly know him, therefore cannot judge how he sees you. Does that sum it up?
It is. Not entirely inaccurate, no?
What a woeful state of affairs this is. It sounds like you would be wretched whether you were in my castle or out of it, particularly the latter if you entail being by this Herr Gerthardt's side. Perhaps I did you a favor by bringing you here. Make did not reply to this. She did not want to give Magdalena the satisfaction. Well, never mind all that. Your fiancé can try to look for you if he likes. I do not care. I doubt he would be able to best me. But you said you wished to avoid all that. Did I really? Yes, you did. That's why you proposed letting me go. Oh, yes, good memory. It would seem that the cold hasn't eaten away all of your faculties. Not just yet, at least. As for why I changed my mind, well, that needn't concern you. But this is about me. Surely it must concern me. Oh, there's no real reason behind it. It was something more of an act on whimsy on my behalf. If you really want to know why I went along with your chicanery? I've never seen that word before in my life. Chicanery? I'm gonna Google that. Yeah. Chicanery. Trickery to achieve political, financial, or legal purpose. Cool. Yeah. Anyway. Let's just say I felt touched, that's all, upon seeing you throw away life for the sake of your maid. Very few mistresses were capable of such compassion. It was truly remarkable. I didn't want your efforts to be in vain, that's all. And you are prepared to put yourself in danger for that? I wouldn't be in any danger. I'm a vampire. I'll shatter the rib cages with a single touch. Thereabouts, at least. Now, you really must get some sleep. It will be much better for you than asking all these silly questions. I have nothing to change into. What will I sleep in? I considered as much. I took the liberty of stocking the drawers with some of my own clothes before I fetched you. You should find that they fit more or less. And they're clean, which is more than can be said for the rest of the linens in the place. There are books, too, on the shelves, which you may read. I drew up a basin of water for you to wash yourself upon waking. You wouldn't find no better amenities at any inn. I do hope you have a pleasant night and sweet dreams. Magdalena smiled sardonically and dropped Make another curtsy. I just try not to breathe in through your nose if the smell bothers you. I would not want you to spend the night coughing. Fair lady such as you needs her sleep. Laughing to herself, Magdalena straightened and then turned. As she departed, her long cloak trailing behind her age-spotted carpet, trailing against the age-spotted carpet, and shut the door behind her. Make waited until she heard Magdalena's footsteps fade, and rose to her feet once more. She crossed the room, legs trembling, seized the doorknob between her fingers, but it stubbornly refused to budge. No shock there. The door was locked. Well, of course this is. Make sighed. What did I expect? Defeat. Meike returned to her bed. Weary from all that happened, she collapsed upon it, her loose hair strewn in spirals across the sheets. Staring at the ceiling, which was drenched in darkness, Meike muttered softly to nobody in particular. What am I gonna do now? Meike's question, of course, fell upon deaf ears, and there was nobody in Magdalene's home to hear her. She was all alone. Neko tossed and turned uneasily that night in bed, which smelt of disuse and decay. The bed was more comfortable than the cell in which she had been held, but it was almost as cold. Its thin sheets eaten away by old age and insects. At least the dungeon, with its sole wooden cot and its solitary window barred against the moonlight, was supposed to be inhospitable. This bedroom, meanwhile, was different. It was a different matter, which it richly furnished. It was richly furnished, yet all its decorations, since it's been wrecked by time's unrepentant advances. The men and women who must have stayed in this room once more than a century ago would have surely been dead by now. In that sense, the room also felt into a crypt. Did that make the bed a sarcophagus, Meike a corpse? Magdalena had spared Meike's life for present, but Meike doubted that she would be so fortunate in the future. Magdalena was not, Meike reminded herself, a human, but a vampire. She meant to suck Meike of her blood, and when she did, Meike would lose her life, just as the room's previous inhabitants surely had. Magdalena's home was so decrepit it seemed unfathomable that the life flourished within its walls. It was so very different, really, from the Von Essen mausoleum. The air smelt the same. It smelt of death. No matter how Meike tried, she could not get comfortable. All the while, she tried to sleep, and she heard the wind howling outside, creeping stealthily like a black-cloaked thief through the cracks of the glass panes. Meike's bare toes curled against the mattress anxiously. She shuddered. What was to become of her now? Is this all I get? This is all I get? No! I kind of figured it'd probably only be the first chapter. That was good. I'm looking forward to more of this. Unfortunately, the rest of this doesn't launch until sometime next year, I think. It's so good, though. It's very good, very spooky. Let's go 2.5 Studios. Well, that's the demo. That was really good. I liked it a lot. I can't wait to dive into the rest of this. When it comes out, I don't think they have a definitive date yet. I think it just says 2025. So it'll probably be first quarter next year, I think. I could be wrong. I don't have information on that. I'm just happy that 2.5 Studios sent us the code for it today. Is very good. I love the mood. The setting is very... They did a really good job at setting that up. I'm looking forward to the rest of this. I'm ready for the actual romance, you know? It's very good, very good. Anyway, I'll probably leave it at that. I don't think I'm gonna do anything else today. Since I'm getting double vision, I probably should eat something else too. I've only had like a bowl of green beans this morning. Anyway, you know, do the YouTube things, like and subscribe. I put a link to this game down below. The least I could do. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this. Magdalena's so fucking hot. They both are, but pretty white hair. Pretty white hair vampire. Tickles my fancy. Alrighty. Well, I'll see y'all later. Oh, bye.